So I'm going to start out with a story. I went to a small college in Northeast Ohio, which is where McConnell Marketing is, by the way, called Mount Union. And when I was there, I worked at the radio station. And I'd walk into the office every day at the radio station. I saw a sign that said, "Content is king." And philosophically, the idea behind this was that content is what you do as a station. It's the number one thing that you can do is deliver great content, because that's going to give you your audience, it's going to give you your sponsorships, it's going to basically fund and do everything that you do as a station. So that's the number one thing. And I understood this as an idea, but I didn't really understand it until a couple years later when I was doing play-by-play for the football team. We used to do a trivia giveaway at halftime. So people would call in to listen to Mount Union, and we would do a trivia question, and they would win a t-shirt. And it was really cool because people who would call in were from California, Texas, New York, and it's a really small school in Ohio. So I was always amazed that, man, people are calling in from all over, and that's when it hit me that we had the content. It didn't matter that we weren't ESPN, it didn't matter that we weren't professionals, what mattered is that we had the content that they wanted to listen to. So if there's one thing that I can leave you with today, it's the value of having great content in any of your marketing strategies. And that's kind of what this story is supposed to do. So what's in a title? Why social media isn't enough? Now, social media, obviously something that's really important in any marketing campaign today. But what I'm going to get across is that social media is just part of the puzzle. Social media is not everything. And I'm sure that you guys know, okay, obviously social media isn't everything, but what I really want to get across is how social media fits into this bigger puzzle and this bigger framework of content marketing. That's what content marketing is, it's a framework. So we had the little Twitter guy, now he's part of a tree. He's part of this bigger framework that is content marketing. And when we first came across this idea, we were looking at all of our digital strategies. We looked at our website, we had our blog, we had e-newsletters, and we had our social media. And we were trying to figure out, okay, how do these pieces fit together? What do these things have to do with each other? We knew that they were connected, but we weren't really sure how our social media strategy should work with our e-newsletter strategy. And that's kind of what content marketing gave us. It gave us this framework in which we can make one marketing strategy and incorporate everything from social media to blogging to e-newsletters to our website. And it was really useful. 285, this is one of my favorite slides of the whole presentation. That's the number of pieces of content that people come across every single day, your average user. So, I mean, think about yourself. If you're on the internet, you're getting a bunch of tweets per day, you're getting texts, you're getting different websites, all kinds of things are coming across at the rate of 285. So that's really to show you that you have to have really good content in order to get that stuff across. So if you're putting out a tweet, if you're putting out a newsletter, whatever you're doing on the internet, you have to compete with over 200 other pieces of great content. So that's really just to reinforce the idea that it's a really crowded place out there and people's attention spans are extremely valuable. All right, so now that I gave you a little bit of my background and some background in social media, we're going to talk more about the details of what content marketing is. So this is one of my favorite definitions of content marketing. Traditional marketing and advertising is telling the world that you're a rock star, while content marketing is showing the world that you are one. So for us, we think of this, okay, we're a creative firm, and instead of telling people how creative we are and how great our ideas are, we show you. So we come up with creative tweets, we come up with creative website design, we send samples out to people that show how good our work can be. And that's kind of the opposite of a traditional advertising where you're just telling someone, you're spouting the benefits of your company. So content marketing affords you the opportunity to show how great you are as a company, how great your hotel is, rather than telling people about it. This is the skeptical definition. This is completely opposite. This is for the people who think, okay, social media, I don't really get it. Why do people care about what I'm saying on the internet? Your customers don't care about you, your products, or your services. What they care about is themselves, their wants and their needs. Content marketing is about creating interesting information that your customers are passionate about so they actually pay attention to you. So this definition gets across this idea that content marketing as an idea can really bridge the gap between what you're trying to tell people and their own self-centered interests. And this is the McConnell marketing definition. This is just something that this is how we think of it. It's kind of an easy way to break it down without getting into the big philosophy. Creating original, compelling, and useful content to engage in conversations with customers. And the key part about our definition is the word engage, because that's ultimately what this is going to come down to. All right, we've got another clicker question. This one is for points. How many pieces of content does the average person come across daily? I know this was a couple slides ago. Go ahead and answer. And most of you got it right. It is 285. A couple people said 400. But yeah, 285 is the amount that people are going to come across daily on average. Okay.
Who are the two?
It
wasn't me. I don't know how you did that math that quick. I didn't know what 8% was. So the content marketing philosophy, these are the footnotes of what content marketing is as an idea. I've talked about it a little bit before. This is just sort of a summation of that. The idea that I really want to get across with this is this idea of value. So the entire concept behind content marketing is starting with this idea that you want to become a source of value to your consumers. You're not trying to sell something to them through content marketing, but you're not trying to sell to them directly. What you're trying to do is become this source of information that they trust. And like I said earlier, content is core, everything else is secondary. And the idea behind value is that value can be anything from something being useful, it can be educational, informative. It's really anything that people are taking away and getting something from. So at this point in the presentation, I like to slow things down a little bit because right now you're thinking, okay, there's 285 pieces of content, we need to do this, you're thinking about your website, you're thinking about this and that. But at this point, I want to ask you guys to slow down a little bit and to remember that strategy needs to come before tactics. So you want to slow down a little bit and think, okay, who is our audience? What are they consuming? These are the ideas when you're developing a content marketing strategy that you need to think of. You can't just jump into, okay, we need to do everything better. We need to do this. We need to slow down a little bit. You got to think of your audience first, and then you can develop a strategy. I'm going to go more into how to develop a content marketing strategy later in the presentation, but right now I just want to get across this idea that you want to be strategic when thinking about this, like any marketing strategy, before you just dive into the actual tactical side of things. All right, now I want to talk about some hallmarks of great content. This is basically a checklist that we came up with that identifies what a good piece of content is. So I've talked a lot about giving value, about engaging with customers, but this is an easy way to look at a piece of content, be that a tweet or a Facebook post or a blog post or whatever, and look and decide if it's a great piece of content. So it's got to be useful, relevant, timely, and novel. And novel has an asterisk on it because that's one that's a little bit different for us. It's something that we like to include in the hallmarks of great content, but it's not necessarily something that you want to use all the time. So when I say novel, I mean something that's a little maybe weird, different, something that people aren't going to see every day. And the example I think of with this is on April Fool's Day last year, we put up a blog post that was about llamas. It was 5 reasons your hotel needs a llama. So normally we put up different articles about how you can improve your hotel marketing, how you can engage with guests, all this stuff. But for this one, we were kind of jokey and we put, okay, why you need a llama. And it was written very seriously, but it actually had the most clicks that we've had in like 6 months, just because it was something different, because people are coming across, they're like, what's this ridiculous article? So that's why novelty is a big thing, but obviously you can't use that every time, so that's why we've got the asterisk on it. So it's definitely a tool you want to have in your pocket, but not something that is going to make or break your entire strategy. Another thing I want to hit on here, because relevant and timely are fairly self-explanatory, is the idea of usefulness. I want to get back to the idea that usefulness equals value. So it doesn't have to be useful in the traditional sense that it's going to make someone's life easier. It can be useful in the sense that it just gives them value, like it entertains them, it informs them. It's sort of a broader definition of what usefulness means when you make content. So really think of that in terms of, okay, it's useful or it's valuable. All right, these are some popular types of content. Obviously, we said the title of this presentation is that social media is not enough. So these are a bunch of examples of different types of content that companies are using. Some popular ones that I'm seeing lately, microsites are pretty popular. Those are small, very focused websites. They're just going to focus on one particular part of the website. Mobile apps are becoming big. I know that the Ritz-Carlton has their own mobile app. Marriott has a mobile app. I went to a conference a couple months ago, and there were even companies that were doing it for independent hotels. So mobile apps are something that are becoming really popular and are part of this content marketing mix. So this is an example of a piece of content that we put out that we thought met all the hallmarks of great content. This was an e-card, holiday e-card that we did. It was useful to people because it was informative, it gave them some information about the holidays. It was relevant because it was about the travel industry and it was for hospitality clients. It was novel because we had a little moving everything that people thought was kind of fun. And it was timely because it was about the holidays and it was sent out in November. So this is an example of something that we think meets the criteria of pieces of content. This is something that we did for a client. This is from the Mandarin Oriental, New York, where it's a really good example of content marketing because you can really see the different pieces fit together. So they did a microsite that highlighted their new suites of Mandarin Oriental. They did a tweet wishing you sweet dreams or new suites where they also incorporated that content. And then they had a little e-newsletter that they sent out that had the different suites. So it's a good illustration of content that is useful to people, it's unique, it's interesting, but it also shows how content marketing can take one idea and really spread it across these several different areas. So which of the following is not a hallmark of great content? We got another clicker question for you. All right, 93% said weird. It's kind of when I wrote this, I realized that novel is kind of weird, so it's kind of the same. So you kind of get it's a little weird. So if you said useful and thought the weird was one, that's okay, you're forgiven for this, but you don't get points, so sorry about that. So now that everyone has an idea of what content marketing is and the philosophy behind it, I'm going to talk about how to actually implement this at your organization. So if you're a social media manager or you work with someone that's managing your social media, or really any of your digital strategies, like I said, this is about why social media isn't enough. This is the time where you can see, okay, how do I actually sit down and come up with a way to implement this? So developing a content marketing plan, it's very similar to just a regular marketing plan. You're going to start with your target audience, try and identify who they are, move on to deciding your content type, talk about crafting high quality content, and then we're going to move into two things that I haven't really touched on yet, which are content curation and timing and frequency, but we'll get to those a little bit later. So identifying your target audience. A big thing to take away from this is that each piece of content and each different vehicle of content you're using, be it your website or social media or whatever, is going to have a slightly different audience. So if you're composing a tweet, you know that audience might not be the same as if you're putting out an e-newsletter to industry professionals. So the important thing here is to be very specific and think about your audience before crafting whatever piece of content that you're going to create. You want to be as specific as possible as well. Like I said earlier, there's 285 pieces of content that you're basically competing with every day. So if your piece of content, whatever you're putting out, isn't very specific and useful to people, then it's probably just going to get lost in the shuffle. So if you put out generic things, it's okay, but it's just going to blend in with everything else. So now that we've decided on our audience, we're going to talk about deciding on content type. And this is a cool chart that we put together at McConnell Marketing where we were able to see what our most effective content marketing tools were and then see which ones cost us the most. We were able to see basically which one gave us the best return on investment. So we've got effectiveness on the left here, we've got time and money on the right. We were able to plot our different tools, and this is something that everyone's going to have to do independently. It's just a good exercise to sit down and look, okay, how long does it take us to craft a blog? How long does it take us to set up a microsite? And then look at how effective those different things are. Like I said, everything is going to be subjective and it's going to depend on your individual situation, but it was just a tool that we did that is nice to look at things visually. And we're all marketers, so we like looking at things visually. Crafting high quality content. Talked about this in the broad sense already. Just some tips that I like to talk about. One of the big ones is, would you click it? And I know this sounds kind of dumb, like, okay, obviously, I would click it, but if anyone's worked on a social media page before or managed anything like that, you know that it's really easy to get caught up in the idea of, okay, I need to get something out, I need to post today, I need to do this. And a lot of times you can just put out content and not really think about whether or not it's good enough that you would click it personally. So I've had a lot of times when I was managing social media where I put something out, I look at it the next day and go, really, was that a good post? So it's just a nice idea to think, to slow yourself down and think about, is it a great piece of content? Is it something that you would click on? It's just one of those things that I think is really helpful. All right, another question here. What is the most common type of content? So this is from the chart. Which one was at the very top? All right, most of you guys got it right. B is actually kind of a good answer because there is a lot of stuff out there that is not good content. And if it was all great content, I probably wouldn't be giving this presentation today. So that's kind of a valid answer as well. Illustrations and photos are actually becoming really popular throughout social media, but on that one I was looking for social media content. All right, so this isn't really a step in developing a content marketing strategy, but it's something that I think is important enough that I wanted to include as a slide by itself. And it's this idea of listen first. So I first learned about this, I was in a social media class in college, and our professor kept saying, listen first, listen first. And that's the idea that before putting out your next tweet or your next Facebook post or whatever, you want to hear what your audience is saying. So how are they responding to your content? How are people not responding to your content? If you're putting out a newsletter and it gets no clicks, you're listening by seeing, okay, nobody's clicking on it. So it's just an idea where a lot of times in content marketing, in social media, in digital marketing, we all get obsessed with putting out the next piece of content. What do I want to put out? But we don't really think about what our audience is saying about it. So it's really important to have this mentality of listen first, to slow down a little bit. How is our audience responding? What do they like? What don't they like? And use that to craft a better strategy. Another tip from this slide that I like to emphasize is if someone is talking to you on social media or through blogs or whatever, and they're saying something negative about your hotel or about whatever company you're working for, you want to sympathize publicly and then deal with the problem privately. Which basically I mean by that is that if someone tweets, okay, I had a terrible time at your hotel, publicly on your Twitter account, you want to go back and say, sorry you had a bad experience, direct message us and we'll take care of the problem. So that's an easy tip, just to kind of de-escalate the situation, tell them that it's getting taken care of, and then deal with it without it being right in the public spotlight. Content curation is the next step in developing a content marketing strategy. The idea behind content curation is sharing content. So it's the idea that you don't have to create all original content within your strategy, you can share it. So you can take articles from a different website that you think is going to be relevant to your audience. The main idea behind the content marketing strategy is just to be a source of information. You don't necessarily have to be just a creator of good content. An example of how we use this is that we do an e-newsletter about quarterly, and we will put in a good mix of a couple of McConnell Marketing blog articles, but then we'll put out, okay, here's an interesting article that we found about this innovative new hotel in France, and then we'll put, here's a funny video we found on YouTube that we think you'll like. So you can mix things in, and it really takes kind of a load off of coming up with new, original, compelling content all the time. It's something that you want to mix in and just have a good balance. This also includes retweets, reposting on blogs, on Pinterest, sharing different boards, anything like that. But again, like I said, it can even be things that aren't social media, where you're putting out a newsletter and you're sharing content that way. These are just some rules of thumb for content frequency. So again, I know that I'm focusing a lot on social media despite the title of this, but again, it's going to be everything. Facebook and Twitter, just some examples, 3 to 5 times weekly on Facebook, Twitter once a day if you can, blog articles 1 to 3 monthly. I say that these are really rules of thumb though, because they are going to depend on your organization. The two big things that they're going to depend on are, number one, your audience. So how is your audience responding? If people are unfollowing you on Twitter because you're posting 10 times a day, maybe that's a sign you should scale it down. If no one is responding to your tweets, maybe you should up it a little bit. With blog articles, the same thing. Maybe you'll get away with a weekly post. Maybe you can do only once a month. It's all going to depend on your audience. And the other thing that it's going to depend on is your organization in general. So how many people do you have to manage your social media accounts? Do you have the people to do it? Do you have expertise? That kind of thing. So just a good guide to be in that ballpark, but again, you want to adjust this to your audience.
I have a question.
Yes?
Isn't there a certain time during the day that's better than not to make those posts?
There are, and that's one that I would have put it on in this PowerPoint, but I think it would have got a little too complicated because it depends on, again, who your audience is. So I've had some times where I've been posting for a client where if I post in the morning, I'll get a ton of retweets, a ton of likes, but for a different client, if I post at night, it'll be the exact opposite. So a lot of times it just depends on your audience. You can probably find what it would be for hospitality or guests, but yeah, there are definitely some. It's something you have to experiment with. Now I'm going to talk a little more about specific things that I've learned being a social media manager that can make your content better. So these aren't really the hallmarks, these are just some tips and tricks to make better pieces of content that you can take away. They're not really part of the overall content marketing philosophy as much, but they're just some tips and tricks that are going to help you put out better content. But first, we've got an opinion question. Which social media platform does your hotel use? So no points on this one, it's opinion, just kind of curious to see. You can click more than one. All right, pretty good mix here. I feel bad for Google Plus because I really like it and we have a page for McConnell Marketing, but it just seems like it's kind of losing a lot of steam right now. But that's interesting that we have 5%. So here are some examples of what makes a good Facebook post versus a bad Facebook post. The one on the left is really cool. It's from the Intercontinental Miami. They have this service where you can text us, housekeeping service, different things you want them to do. So if you need more towels, if you need refreshments, whatever. So these people texted them, build us a pillow fort, and they came in and they did. So they have this really cool pillow fort that they posted. And what makes this a really good piece of content is that it goes back to that very first definition that I shared with you, which was showing the world that you're a rock star, not telling them. So the Intercontinental Miami in a traditional advertisement could tell people about how great their customer service is, how great their housekeeping is, but they're really showing people, look, we're actually going to put forth the effort to build you a pillow fort if you want one. So it's a really cool piece of content that they have. The Holiday Inn Boardman on the right here, not so much. It is a menu, Happy Mother's Day. It's difficult to read. It has content up there. It's just not great. It doesn't have a lot of images on it. It's hard to read. It's not really original or useful in that sense. So, I mean, they had the right idea of putting out something that people want, which is, okay, here's our Mother's Day menu. This is what we're going to have. But they didn't really do anything that made it stand out like the Intercontinental Miami did. So here are some Facebook best practices. One of the ones that I like to highlight are the idea of hiding a link, which is you're going to post on Facebook, put your link in, but then you can actually go back and delete the link, which is going to leave the thumbnail, it's going to leave the actual thing that you're linking to, but it's going to make it look a lot cleaner. So that's a tip that I like to use. It just makes your post look a lot cleaner, a lot more professional, and more eye-catching.
So that's if you type in the address, it'll automatically put the thumbnail in box,
Yep.
so you just go back and you just delete the,
Yes.
okay, and that won't delete the thumbnail.
Nope, it'll leave the thumbnail there. It
Okay.
just makes it cleaner. All right, another question here. What is the first step to developing a content marketing plan? A, call McConnell Marketing. B, ask your intern what content marketing is. C, identify your target market. Or D, choose content type. All right, thank you, people who said A. People who said D, wake up a little bit. Identify your target market is the first one. Same thing that any marketing plan is going to start with. Here's an example of a good tweet versus a bad tweet. This one's a little bit different than just saying, hey, come visit us at the spot. But the reason that I like to pull this one up is that it has really good formatting and it just looks like an interesting post. It just looks a lot more click-friendly. They have wellness, they have a picture that's related. They have hashtag New York City, hashtag Times Square. For the Hotel Edison, for the Doubletree Bedford, they just say, check out these awesome pictures, and they have like a dot and a link. The problem with a post like that is that you're not showing the pictures. So check out these awesome pictures, and they just give a link. They don't really have any reason to follow through. So that post could have been much better if they would have just taken a picture and said, check out an awesome picture like this, and then put the picture up there to show people the cool content that they had. Another thing that they did is they used no hashtags for the Doubletree Bedford. Hotel Edison did a nice job with hashtags. Didn't overuse it, they did enough. And some Twitter best practices. One of my favorites with this is use a link shortening service. So those are things like bit.ly or tinyURL. Basically, you have a full link and you put it into one of these services, it's going to shrink it down. Since you only have 140 characters on Twitter, it's really a valuable tool to saving those characters. Another thing I like to point out with Twitter is use images as much as you can. If you can put an image with every one of your tweets, that would be great. You can get away with doing it for every other tweet or whatever, but even if it's not directly related to what you're doing, if you have a piece of stock photography that you can put up that just makes your tweet look a little friendlier, that's always a really good idea. Another thing I like to point out is leave room for retweets. So you have 140 characters in your tweet. If you use every single one and someone tries to retweet you, they're gonna have to reformat it. And actually, Twitter just changed something with this, so it's not as big of a problem, but it is something you want to be aware of, is that if someone hits retweet, they need to have room to put RT and their handle. So you want to basically what you want to do is try and be as efficient as possible when writing a tweet and make it as short as possible without giving up information. Here are some examples of a good blog versus a bad blog. And this is actually one of our clients, and it's really good because it's two of the same exact blog posts, or two of the same exact blog page, but two different posts that are formatted differently. So it really illustrates the fact that you can have one post that's formatted, that's much more readable, and you can have one post that's from the same website that is not formatted well and is not very readable. So the one on the left, we have little headlines that make it easy to break things up. We've got a detail section, some hyperlinks. The one on the right, obviously, is just a giant block of text. And the keyword with blogging to take away is skimmable. So is my content skimmable? People aren't going to sit down and read every single word of an article. What they're going to do is look through, skim some headlines, take away what they want from the article, and then move on. Some blogging best practices, great headlines. That's one of the things that I like to focus on. You should spend a lot of time on crafting a good headline for a blog, because most of the people in your audience aren't going to read your blog, they're just going to see your headline. So most of the people are going to see the headline, not as many are going to get through to the content, so you want to try and track them as well as you can with a great headline. And this is the same thing with email subject lines, e-newsletter headlines, even some Facebook posts. You want to spend a lot of time getting the person to actually read the article before really thinking about what the content is, because if they don't make it there, it's not going to matter. Another tip I like to share with blogging is lists are your friend. It's a great way to format your ideas. If you do top 5 hotspots in the city, top 4 reasons our hotel is better than the other hotel, whatever, using lists are a really good idea to make things skimmable, organize your thoughts, and make the content overall more interesting. All right, on social media, remember to blank first. Remember to retweet first, listen first, answer first, panic first, or whip and nay first. 100%. All right, I think that's the first one that we've had 100%. Remember to listen first. Great. So now, obviously, we've talked about setting up your plan. Now you're in the stages of how am I going to keep this organized? How am I going to keep up with social media? One of the biggest problems that I ran into as a social media manager was remembering that I had to tweet so many times a week. I had to write a blog post so many times a week. I needed to check our website so many times. So this is just a really simple calendar that I made that is actually downloadable from our site if you want it. If you're just managing like one property or one hotel, it's really useful. Just an easy way to keep track of your posts and stay organized. And consistency is a really big thing on social media, so that's another reason why it's good to have a calendar. If you're putting out content on a consistent basis, people are going to respect and follow you, rather than if you're doing if you're going to do like 4 posts in a day and then don't post again for a week and do 4 posts, it's really hard to follow. So if you want to be consistent, spread things out pretty evenly, and a calendar is a great way to do that. Another tool is scheduling post software. There are tools called Hootsuite and Buffer that I've used before. Those are 2 of the main ones where you can schedule posts. They're really useful if you're managing a lot of clients. I really wouldn't recommend them if you're just handling one account, just because the formatting can get a little weird. Sometimes with these, if you're scheduling a post, it'll put it up, but the formatting won't look right. It'll add in a link that'll look a little strange. So I would put forth the extra effort and just do it manually if you're just managing one account rather than using one of these. But it all depends on you. It depends on how many people you have managing your accounts. It can get really time consuming. So it's definitely something to look into, but I would advise, if you can, just doing it manually. Another question, I think this might be our last question. Traditional marketing and advertising is telling the world you're a rock star, but content marketing is blank that you are one. Telling the world that you are one, showing the world that you are one, shouting that you are one, or floundering that you are one. 100% showing that you are one. Great. Okay, so now this is the point of the presentation where I bring everything full circle a little bit. So the clickers that you have on your desks, we thought were kind of a good metaphor for content marketing because they really hold up to the 4 hallmarks of great content. They were useful during the presentation because they made it a little more interactive. They were novel because you probably haven't used them before. They were relevant because we're talking about content and having people engage with you, and timely because we were getting real-time feedback. So this is just a way that we were able to actually incorporate a form of content marketing into the presentation itself. These are our resources, and let's find out who won. Participant 19, you had 3.91 points. Don't know how I came up with that. Who's 19? Oh, great. Give me your information after the presentation and we'll send you a prize package. All right, thank you so much, you guys. Happy presentation.
Questions? Really? Questions? There we go.
Hashtags on Facebook, useful, not useful.
I use them as a tool to make my post look better. So I'll use a hashtag because I think it looks good visually. don't know if they're really useful or not.
As far as the rules of like Facebook posting 3 to 5 times weekly, Twitter and blogs, would that, I know this is for hotels, would you say that's for any company though?
Yeah, it's really a good base, but like I said on that slide, it's really going to come down to your audience. So you want to start with 3 to 5 and then adjust depending on what your response is or if you have enough time to do it. Yes.
How do you feel about content that might start on Instagram and then go to other platforms? Would you rather them share it from Instagram or just repost it as an original post on each of the sites?
That's a good question. I would say that as long as the content is somehow linked back to you, it's really helpful. I mean, because as long as you're becoming the source for it, so if they're sharing it on Instagram and they're liking it, or if they're taking it and reposting it in a different format, as long as your content's getting out there, I think it sort of fits into the main idea of what you're trying to do. But I think optimally, as long as it's getting back to you, it's okay. Thank you.
Questions? More? No? We know everything? Here we go.
Kelly.
This presentation, you can find that on your website.
Yes, great question. You can find it on our website. You can get a PDF of the calendar and the presentation at mcconnellmarketing.com/content marketing. And if you tweet about this, please use the hashtag content is king.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.